Hi everyone, it's Dan here from Genie again. Just still waiting for a few more people to log on. We've got a planned over 200 people listening this evening, and so far 80 of the people have logged on. So we're just going to give it another few more minutes for the last few to come in. This webinar will be recorded and circulated to all attendees tomorrow, with Q&As being circulated a few days later. So just for now, I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes for those to attend, and then we can commence. Thanks so much. Good evening, everyone. It's Dan here from Genie. I think we are slowly seeing a few more logging on, but I think it's a good time now, better than ever, to get started. Okay. Welcome to Genie's webinar on off-payroll working for the public sector and other budget fallout. My name is Dan Moss, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Director here at Genie. Having previously qualified as an accountant and serviced contractors directly for over 15 years, we felt it best I present to you again the contracting community. Some of my presentation is based on a series of webinars we've been holding with a large number of agencies in order to get their feedback. A couple of the slides some of you may have seen from former webinars. These are merely here for recap, but I assure you there is new content in the presentation. As a company, we are accredited members of the Freelancer and Contractors Services Association, and my CEO is also a board member. This presentation should last about 30 minutes, allowing time for a Q&A session at the end. Last time round, we were inundated with questions, but were unable to answer everything on the night. This time round, my commercial director, Andrew Webster, is on hand to assist me with those questions. We will, though, take all questions away, circulate answers to them in a few days, and recorded copies of this webinar will also be issued tomorrow. I will place you all on mute while I go through the presentation. As so many people have attended the webinar, we have decided to keep the Q&A session to typed questions only, that way stopping any background noise interfering. The question box is on the right-hand side of your screens. It will be open throughout the session, and I encourage you to type in your questions as they occur to you, and we will try to answer them at the end of the presentation. As mentioned before, we'll be sending a copy of the slide deck to all of you together with answers to any questions you have raised. Okay, so let's get started. By now, I'm sure all of you are aware that the Chancellor made a series of announcements in the autumn statement last year. With 20 days to go, we're now about to feel the negative impact, not only for you, but for your recruitment agency and potentially your end clients as well. These changes are likely to increase the tax you have to pay and ultimately reduce your take-home pay, so this is important for everyone. I've set out the agenda, which I hope will cover everything that's relevant and will have an impact on you either now or in the future. I will do my best to cover off all the points. As a bit of background, I've sat through many meetings with HMRC and HM Treasury, attending HMRC meetings with REC, APSCO, IPSI, large agencies, small agencies, accountancy bodies and others. My CEO, Graham Fisher, also attended a Chatham House Rules meeting with the Chancellor the day after the autumn statement last year, but also met with the Chancellor again last week, post-budget. I was also one of the first to see the latest iteration of the online digital tool, which you may be aware of. If not, I will be referring to this later. As you can imagine, we've really submersed ourselves in this area. Before I move on, I want to again reiterate that Genie believes the changes announced in both the autumn statement and budget will damage the growth, flexibility and well-being of the temporary workforce. We made these points in the meeting with the Chancellor and came away with a clear impression that the government genuinely value the flexible workforce. But we have an image problem and are seen as serial tax avoiders. And until the supply chain partners are seen to act as catalysts for compliance and best practice, the contracting community will continue to be targeted and undervalued. On a positive note, we were asked to urge the industry to participate fully in the fairer tax consultation. Before I get into the detail, and for the benefit of those who may have missed the last webinar, here's a very quick overview of IR35. IR35 tax legislation is designed to combat tax avoidance by workers supplying their services to clients via an intermediary, such as a limited company, but who would be an employee if the intermediary was not used? Such workers are defined as disguised employees by HMRC. Assessing IR35 status is subjective and based on a number of factors: actual working practices, mutuality of obligation, financial risk, control, provision of equipment, substitution, right of dismissal, employee benefits, and contractual terms. Until now, public sector contractors operating for their own limited company, you, have been responsible for determining whether their contract falls inside or outside IR35. Contractors, again you, inform your accountants of current status, who then calculate your taxes based on that decision. And if HMRC later decides the contractor was wrong and they have underpaid their taxes, the contractor will be liable not only for back taxes but also for HMRC fines and interest. However, 6th of April, around the corner, everything changes. Whilst attending various meetings with HMRC, it became quite obvious that this has been nothing but short of a shambolic process. There's been lack of enforcement by HMRC, still some 17 years on from the introduction of IR35. Exploitation by suppliers, agencies and contractors across the market have been using unscrupulous models. Savings have been exaggerated. When we challenged HMRC to the amount they proposed to save, they couldn't substantiate these claims or where the numbers came from. There's also been unintended consequences. What happens to the high-skilled workers moving from public to private sector? A question I hadn't thought of. What about public sector completion dates, with contractors walking off-site? What happens to those? Again, questions I hadn't thought of. Draft legislation doesn't work. No fault for those who have moved between public, private sector and run multiple assignments. Again, ill thought out. Insufficient time for transition. Still now, we're waiting for legislation to be issued on the 20th of March with a launch date of the 6th of April. However, HMRC are confident and there's no delay in implementation. So let's focus on the fundamental changes. Firstly, public sector contractors no longer determine status. This responsibility is now moved to the public sector body. Any back taxes or fines payable as a result, if it's wrong, will fall on the public sector body that engages you. So that's why this is important. Clearly, you need to know if you're working in the public sector. The public sector is defined as organisations covered by the Freedom of Information Act 2000. The Act includes government departments, legislative bodies, armed forces, local government, NHS, schools, and further and higher education, police, the British Museum, BBC, Channel 4, security forces, and various publicly owned companies, including, for example, Transport for London. Unfortunately, the list is 38 pages long, so there's a lot. Easiest way to check, if you're not sure, is to ask your client. If, however, you're working for an outsourced private sector supplier, e.g. Mighty, Capital, or G4S, you will not be affected by these changes and you will continue to determine your IR35 status. So if you were told that your assignment is outside IR35, little will change. You'll invoice your agency or your client, if you're employed through your PSC directly by the client, in the normal way. You'll be paid gross and account for taxes on the basis that you're outside IR35 as usual. However, the agencies are now on the hook for unpaid taxes by you, the PSC contractor, where you are deemed to be operating inside IR35 and where they are the fee payer. The new proposals force them to put you on their payroll and deduct PAYE and NIC as if you were an employee. Let's have a little look at the detail. We're told there are no current plans to make changes in the private sector, but we'll wait and see. Outsourced services direct to the public sector, no changes there. This legislation only affects the public sector. So again, keep looking out for clauses for the Freedom of Information Act. Inside scope is personal services, PSCs, public sector body when they're present in the supply chain. Responsibility for IR35 assessment moves to the PSB, the public sector body, and liability for paying the correct taxes lies with a fee payer. Here we've produced an infographic which may help you determine where you sit regarding being in the scope of IR35 reform. We've had many questions around this, so this might help give you guys some clarity. The first chain to the left, so we're looking to the far left here, includes the fundamentals, so PSC, agency, end client, but in this illustration also an RPO, so recruitment process outsourcing provider, where an employer, and this is where an employer outsources all or part of its recruitment process to an external provider. That is inside scope. The next one to the right of it is just for standard agreements, so we have a PSC, agency, and a public sector body. I think we're all comfortable with that's within scope. And the last is a contract direct to the public sector body, so eliminating the agency. That is also inside. To the right-hand side, in the green, is private sector. There's a private sector agreements, which we know is outside of scope, and also umbrella employment, which is outside of scope. The third one in the green, this is an outsource model, so this is where recruitment agencies secure projects, complete them to a high standard, on time and within budget. And there also needs to be a clear schedule of works. This is found to be outside of the scope. Okay, moving on. For those on that left hand of the previous slide, here are the options for assessment. The public sector body determines whether IR35 applies or not, and they can use the off-payroll digital tool, which referred to earlier, which is the Employment Status Service, which is HMRC's view. HMRC are pushing everybody to use their tool, and we know from testing that it appears to be heavily weighted to substitution. Speaking to agencies, they inform us that the problem with this is many contractors are taking the test and finding themselves to be outside IR35 on a basis of substitution. But we all know that the tool wasn't designed for contractors to use, it was designed for the public sector bodies to use. And as we know again, the public sector bodies will be risk averse. They'll have concerns around the substitution clause due to control. They're not going to let just anybody walk in on site. And ultimately, they will probably find most people are inside of scope. So it's well played, HMRC. Use of the tool is also not compulsory. But again, remember who liability sits with. The public sector bodies. So again, well played, HMRC. There are alternatives such as Baron Cottrell, Kudos, Accountax, or your accountant who you can speak to. So I urge you to get in contact and discuss your situation with them. Another option here at Orange Genie is trying Contractor Calculator, which is an online digital tool. This is a free online test and can be accessed on the URL on the screen. So orangegenie.ir35testing.co.uk, take the test. I'm going to go into more detail on this in my next slide. Dave Chaplin, CEO of Contractor Calculator, has been busy developing a tool since 2009, which has recently been significantly upgraded. It's been built by industry-leading experts who consult regularly with the Treasury around IR35. With over 100,000 uses of the test, it gives a more favourable and robust feedback on IR35 status. Unlike the HMRC digital tool, where there's 50 questions, this one has 101 questions, so it's more comprehensive and also aligns itself better with case law. It's free to access with no charge for the initial result. Results are given on a 19-point scale. So it's a 25-plus page report which gives some very good analysis. This report will cost £25. The tool matches all 21 IR35 court cases decisions made between April 2000 and 2000. So it's very, very much aligned to case law, which really is where IR35 is born from. If you're in a position of confidence and you feel your status is incorrect, why not use this tool? It may help influence the public sector body to review their assessment. In my mind, for the sake of £25, it could potentially save you thousands of pounds in tax, so it's definitely worth a go. So moving on to tax. Just to reinforce the point, where the public sector bodies informed you that the assignment is outside IR35, there is no change, other than the planned flat rate VAT changes, which I will go over later. If the public sector bodies informed you that the assignment is inside IR35, the agency will have to payroll you, the contractor, as if you're an employee, or they may ask you to work umbrella employment. You will be paid as if you were a permanent employee through their RTI payroll software, although you will have no employment rights. No rights to statutory payments such as statutory sick pay, statutory maternity pay, statutory paternity pay, no pension contributions, and they will not account for student loans. Beware, the government will also be introducing an apprenticeship levy from the 5th of April. If you're with a medium to large agency and their payroll is over £3 million per annum, they will have to account for the deduction through the deemed calculation. You need to make sure this is not passed on to you as an employment cost. The agency or the umbrella will have to go through all the usual checks, right to work, P45 and so on. Incidentally, the public sector proposals have removed your entitlement to the 5% deduction where you are inside IR35. We are told that this was done to ensure agencies do not have to make changes to their payroll software. There are double taxation provisions, and all PSC contractors will need to complete their annual self-assessment tax return and may need to claim back any overpaid taxes. However, we're still waiting to see the detail of this. Finally, it is interesting to note that other than being able to request an explanation as to the basis on which an IR35 assessment is being made, there is no appeals process against the decision. You can, however, appeal for paying too much tax via the usual route, your self-assessment at your fiscal year end. Okay, as promised, I'm just going to move on to the flat rates VAT changes. Irrespective of your contract being the public sector, irrespective of your contract being the public or private sector, the changes for flat rate VAT will affect everyone. The flat rate scheme was designed to be quick, simple and easy, and ultimately to attract more people to register voluntarily so HMRC could raise tax revenue. The attraction being that the business retained an element of the VAT collected. The scheme works by applying an industry-based percentage to your gross sales value, allowing you to pay the less VAT than you have collected from your clients. Under the standard VAT, you would charge a VAT of 20% to your customers and suffer VAT on your purchases. You would then reclaim the difference between VAT charged and suffered. So why have HMRC decided to change things and introduce the new 16.5%? We had been warned. HMRC said the deliberate abuse of a loophole in the VAT scheme by a small number of service providers, principally focused on supply teachers, nurses, social workers and van drivers, will lead to everybody losing out, and they've been true to their word. We feel particularly aggrieved for those contractors operating legitimately and genuinely in business in their own right. However, HMRC estimate that some 41,000 new companies registered between March and August 2016 have taken advantage of this loophole. So we just have a look at some of the numbers and the impact here. Here's an illustration. On the left-hand side is pre-April, which includes VAT rate at 30.5% and also the 5% allowance. And on the right-hand side is post-April, so the 16.5% VAT. You can see the savings drops to £200 as opposed to £3,800, and also the 5% allowance is removed completely. So you can see a significant reduction here. On this slide here, I've done a net pay take-home comparison. This is based on a £400 a day illustration. If you look at this illustration, you'll notice these numbers actually relate to the bottom line. So this is £400 a day, and this is the monthly output. On this slide, if you look at the very bottom line, in the bottom right-hand corner, with the new changes that are coming in, for the first time ever, umbrella employment will actually give you a greater take-home than through your PSC. So this may have an influence on your decision post 5th of April. Okay, so as promised, let's turn to what you should be doing. Please excuse a busy slide. It was easier to list out all of the things that you should be doing, so I'll just run through them one at a time. So establish whether your assignment is in the public sector or not. We found a very useful website here called What Do They Know that lists 19,215 public sector bodies. So I urge you to click on that link and see if it affects you. Speak to your agency and public sector client to establish when they will provide you with the IR35 assessment for your role. We found already that many people we're speaking to are doing their research, getting ready for decisions, and I think the general consensus is people are sitting in that camp waiting for that decision to be made. So remember, it is their decision, so you're well within your right to push them to give you an answer. If they're not ready for the changes and unable to provide an assessment, you can check HMRC's employment status service at tax.service.gov.uk, check employment status for tax setup. This is the question I was referring to earlier, where you can look at your status and see what your outcome is. But remember, it's not your decision, it's a public sector body's. Or, alternatively, use our free online tool in conjunction with Dave Chapman at Contractor Calculator. So click on the link at orangegenie.ir35testing.co.uk, take the test and see where you sit. Number 5, if your assignment appears to be inside IR35, you may be adversely affected financially. So speak to your accountant and establish your post-6th of April position and whether you're affected. If so, establish a rate increase you need to offset for additional tax. So be aware when speaking to your accountant, you may even want to come off a flat rate scheme completely as well. Speak to your agency and public sector clients to discuss whether they're prepared to increase your rate to compensate you for additional tax. Many agencies which I've spoken to have showed willing themselves to push their end clients to lift the rates. So there is opportunity there for you to seek out. Decide whether you wish to remain in the public sector or move to the private sector, or possibly even seek a permanent position. And then look to advise your agency and public sector client of that decision. That may even again prompt them to give you a higher day rate. But if you've got transferable skills, then the private sector may look favourable. Okay, so what next? What are your options? What could you look to do? Here at Orange Genie, we've tried to provide a suite of solutions to our contractors. And here I've just listed the 3 simple options we've got. First one is, if you're deemed outside, or one of the lucky ones to be outside, then continue through your PSC, continue through your limited company, and we're still going to continue to offer that to our contractors. Another option which might be favourable to some is our complete model in the middle, where if you are moving between sectors, or if you want to retain your limited company, there's opportunity there to still continue to use that, but we're going to effectively offer free umbrella employment to our contractors, so a no margin. Or if you are inside and you're going to have to shut your limited company down, then obviously there's the umbrella employment solution, which is available to you. Just a word of note as well is if your company does have reserves above 25k, you may be looking at a members voluntary liquidation as well. And we have one of the most competitive rates in the market for that also. Just covering off the budget, oddly enough, I think everything which has gone on, it was actually then a very quiet budget, and just a few points to note for you contractors. From this slide, I've just projected some of the numbers, which gives a real sort of direction of where the Treasury's trying to head with the numbers. I put question marks in where we've not had confirmed numbers yet, but this will give you a feel of what we're looking at. If you look at the personal allowance is ever on the increase. That's always beneficial. That means we get more tax-free pay and potentially that little bit more take-home. There's going to be some movement within the basic rate bands as well, which is encouraged. One which probably is a direct implication on limited company contractors is the dividend tax allowance, which they recently bought in at 5k, but they're now looking to reduce that to 2k. So are looking to reduce that even further. So possibly that could disappear over time. Some light relief, hey, at last. Corporation tax rate has dropped by a percentage, which really will only be outside IR35 contractors will feel the benefit of, but at least it's some respite in what's been quite a tough time. And then also the flat rate scheme adjustment as well, which is coming. Okay, so that's all of my slides. I'm just leaving up on the screen for you the link to the free online test in case you wish to go onto it. And then we will move on to our questions and answers. Okay, some of the first questions that come in, some of the people have said that they tried to test the link and it's not working. We quickly tested it here while I've been giving the presentation, and I can confirm that the link is working. So if you want to take the test tonight, if you haven't got anything fun on, it is operational. I'm going to introduce my commercial director, Andy Webster, who's been reading some of the questions as well. So Andy will jump in and answer a few as I'm trying to digest some of the questions that are coming also.
Good evening, this is Andrew Webster, Group Commercial Director at Orange Genie. We have a question from Jude Povey. I currently contract for a private sector company. Sorry, Jude, that's the wrong question. There's a couple of questions regarding today's announcement from Chancellor with regards to the changes on NI deductions for self-employed. Just so we're very clear, these are specifically for individuals who deem themselves self-employed for sole trader purposes. So we've seen some lobbying post-budget, which has provided positive response. Does not affect off-payroll changes, individuals operating a PSC.
Okay, a few people are asking questions around the outsource model, so we'll cover this off again. The outsource model was effectively a new thing to us as well. We went away and researched it, and this effectively is where the agency itself decides to secure a project, which it will then complete to a standard on time and within budget. But very much the agency will manage that project to an agreed schedule of works, and then therefore any profit margins they make on it will be theirs. And I think this is quite different to what people are terming consultancies as well.
Another common question, we have one from Emmanuel Vin Cab. If you are within IR35 for off-payroll purposes, can you still be paid through your company, being your PSC, as you are operating PAYE? Yes, the draft legislation clearly states that if you are in scope for off-payroll purposes, and as Dan has mentioned, it's up to your public sector body to determine that on a role-by-role basis, then you can opt for what we call a deemed calculation. So your gross pay will be calculated and deductions made for PAYE purposes by the fee payer, and that net income will then be sent to your PSC. So you can do that. From the work we've done with our PSC customers, likelihood is it will dramatically affect your income. But equally, we do have and recognise PSC customers that may work a number of days within public sector and equally a number of days within private sector. Therefore, there's a genuine need to continue operating the PSC for tax purposes.
Okay, a question here from Emmanuel as well. What's the difference between an umbrella company and my limited company? So a limited company, you are a director of, essentially employed by your own limited company, and you invoice from that company, and the contract is between your limited company and your agency. Under an umbrella employment, you would become an employee of that umbrella company, and the contract between the agency would actually sit between the umbrella company and the agency. You would just then be the employee that went to fulfil that contract on that side. So there's a lot less admin when it comes to umbrella than to a limited company. There are very fundamental differences. Another quick question, would beat Andy to the punch here. There's a question here from Yachty. Sorry, it's jumping around the screen here. Yoti, you've just said, can I make my company dormant rather than liquidate? Yes, you can make your company dormant. What I would suggest is that you speak to your accountant and look at it from a tax point of view. Is it tax efficient to do that? There may be occasions where you might be able to get away for a period paying yourself some dividends, but really you'd have to look at what other income was coming in, because it may actually be more of a tax advantage if you close the entity down and take advantage of capital gains relief, where you can actually pay a lot less tax. So that actually will probably be a question to your accountant and ensuring you get some really solid tax planning there.
We have a very good question from Gerard McGinty regarding options if taxed on all my income for the contract. Hopefully, as we've talked through the webinar, it's clear that if your public sector body deems your role in scope for off-payroll purposes and they do not want to undertake some form of compliance review to determine what level of risk that role is for off-payroll purposes, and yes, if then the instruction is made to the employment agency, which is the fee payer, to calculate and make payment under deem, then yes, your gross pay will be calculated under full PAYE and NIC. Another point there, not so specific to Gerard, but other contractors, do you have to quit? Our view is no, just consider your options. I think there are options with your current public sector body in terms of what to do and the agency that may have placed you there. I think quitting the assignment to then move on to another one in public sector is not the answer. So that was quite a common question from today's webinar.
Just picking up one from Andrew Dudley, good question. Andy's talking about, given that you lose pre-tax benefits such as pension, travel, flat rate, VAT and so on, what would you recommend as a ballpark figure to increase fees by? Andy said he's heard 20%, but been doing his own calculations at near 15%. Andrew, I think we're recommending it's anywhere between sort of 25 and 30% uplift to cover the taxes. Now that is quite a general number. I would say it really depends largely on what your day rate is, because it can fluctuate. Certain day rates, if you're operating for a PSC, can give you a greater return than higher day rates. So if you really want the detail of the calculation, I suggest again you speak to your accountant. 50% in my mind seems quite high. I would be recommending people for anything between 25% and 30%. And again, agencies that I've spoken to have actually been going back to end clients and requesting numbers around this level. So hopefully that answers your question. Just a quick mention to Jason Panico, who's been happy with the information. Just mentioned he's looking forward to seeing the video. The video will also be going on YouTube as well as the slides being circulated to you guys. So just covering that off again. But thank you, Jason.
We've got a question from Malcolm Macken with regards to do we foresee a big shift from public to private sector with contractors and therefore impacts of supply and day rates changing in private? It's quite it's an interesting question in terms of we recognise in the market some contractors provide their temporary services to both public sector and private sector through PSC. We also recognise that some public sector bodies are wanting to engage to understand risk profile of roles and not make the assumption that all roles are in scope of payroll. So that's of great benefit, because if they want to get involved in that compliance provision and sharing of information through supply chain, ultimately they will have a list of medium, high and low risk roles. And the work that our CEO has undertaken in his capacity as main board member of FCSA with the revenue, both policy and product team and then implementation team, there is a genuine sense that whatever is off payroll will be introduced to private sector. So from the contractors that we speak to, those that are wanting to move from public to private sector, I think there's a couple of years shelf life on that before all of this applies to private sector.
Just picking up a question from Jared McGinty. Will we be liable for our own company taxes still, as well as personal tax taken care of by the umbrella? I think, Jared, you're referring potentially to the complete solution, which we've got here. The complete solution, yeah, essentially would be, so the company would run as normal. You would still have to file a self-assessment tax return, but actually under the umbrella employment, your income would be taxed at source and therefore just declared on your tax return. But I think, if I'm getting it right, you're referring to our Orange Genie Complete model where we offer free umbrella employment. And just on the screen behind, I've left up some take-home figures as S. Scott's requested. Just have a quick look at those again. I will be moving those on just to move to the digital tool again, in case some of you want to quickly take a note of that. Okay, quick question from Joe. Joe, you just asked for how much tax we're paying if I'm on a certain day rate. Joe, when we get the answers out, I'll make sure I pick that one up and give you a take-home illustration. And that goes for anybody who's logged in today. If you'd like us to give you an illustration of potentially what you could be taking home, we can do. And Joe, can you just quickly clarify that day, if that's under umbrella employment or if that's going to be through your limited company, because obviously that will give two different outputs. If it's both, then just let us know.
John Birchall asks the question, what has been the feedback from agencies, as surely they will receive the brunt of the admin burden through this change. John, really good question. So if we all agree with the assumption that the majority of contractors secure project through recruitment agency, under draft legislation, agency can be defined as fee payer. They've got some responsibility and some work to do. But in all fairness, from the conversations we've had with recruitment agencies supplying into the public sector bodies, they are looking to the public sector body to tell them what is their intention for payroll purposes. So where that question has been asked, what have we seen? We've seen some public sector bodies saying, we're just going to make a very easy decision and somewhat lazy decision to say that most are in scope for off payroll, so that has its own impact to contractors and agency. Others are saying, no, actually we're going to go away and do some work and determine for off payroll purposes low, medium, high risk roles and share that compliance information through supply chain, which for me brings benefit in that some PSE workers can continue to work on a gross invoice basis. And lastly, I'd say that a lot of agencies that we've been speaking to are looking to the likes of Orange Genie to help in the right type and compliant solution and readiness for off payroll.
Matt McKinney just said, isn't the flat rate scheme changed to 600% across the board only for limited cost businesses? Yes, that's correct, Matt. But I think what you'll find is that pretty much applies to most contractors. Certainly will affect pretty much our whole contractor limited company database. So there's not many that are going to be outside of that. Guy Wells, you said, if deemed in scope, can HMRC look to apply these tax rules retrospectively to a contract? Yes, they can. Unfortunately, it's HMRC that we're dealing with.
So it's a guy on that point. Historically, with intermediaries legislation being IR35, the general view was that revenue could go back 6 years and extenuating circumstances go further. When I was on the revenue digital tool last Friday, when it went live, there was a line at the bottom saying revenue can investigate an individual's status, tax status, for for up to 20 years. So it'd be really good to get from revenue some consistency of what they can do in terms of retrospective review. But it's clear that they can do something.
There's a question I'm just searching for in here and I can't seem to find it, maybe, guys. Someone said that if the public sector body doesn't give you a decision, can you save it yourself? But the public sector body's got 31 days to give an assessment to the fee payer. They don't have to give any detail. All they've got to do is just give them their assessment. No justification of it at all. So you can imagine, again, if we look at the risk-averse side of things, they're probably going to try and deem people inside around it. So it's just a decision, no real detail. Okay, we've still got lots of questions flooding in, which is encouraging. Sorry if we've missed the odd question out. It might we have to go away and just research the answer a bit more. But we're trying to cover off as many as we can. Jessica Bosworth, you asked any chance of a retro grab. I'm not quite techie enough. Can you just give us a little bit more detail of what a retro grab is? What is that?
Could be a retro grab on dividends and others before.
Mark Headley, looks like you're struggling with the link. Our technical expert here is suggesting that if you try orangegenie.ir35testing.co.uk and then just maybe delete the take the test part, that should help you get through. So apologies for that, but our tech whiz here is recommending try and take that out. That may well help you out. Okay, we're just going to take a couple more questions and then we'll be done. Like I said, we will leave the question box open, so please keep asking the questions and then we'll give comprehensive answers at a later date, but we will we'll just pick a couple more before we wrap up.
Yeah, my last one for this evening is David Lawton. Aren't the public sector bodies supposed to be applying a duty of care, which would prevent adopting a blanket approach? I would say it would be great if they would. I think with time again, some of them won't. I think some of them, due to either being misinformed, not really understanding the draft legislation and how to work with it, will look to do something. But we talked about our CEO meeting the Chancellor under Chatham House rules earlier, and the Chancellor has a desire that compliance within the contingent workforce supply chain will come from the end client, which I'm a big supporter of. And so if I was a public sector body, procurement, HR chap, I would be looking to undertake an exercise to understand the risk profile of all the roles that I need within the public sector body, and profile them from a high, medium, low risk perspective, and pass that information through supply chain. Why? Because it allows me to attract the best contractors in the market, retain the ones that I've got, but also allows to engage with proper contractors that would potentially be compliant for off-payroll purposes.
I'm just picking up, and I've reiterated a few times, Neil Hathaway, will the slides be available after webinar? Yes, they will. You'll have a recorded version, and then a few days later we'll be circulating Q&As. Alistair McCrill, you said 35 days from when regarding assessment. It's actually 31 days, not 35 days. From when?
So if we look at this logically, if legislation applies at the beginning of new tax year, 6th of April, let's assume the public sector body, the employment agency as fee payer makes a request. You would assume that 31 days start from the 6th of April. But in the meantime, the conundrum is, how does the public sector body treat the income? Treat the invoices raised by the PSC during those 31 days?
Okay, I think we're going to finish there. Just see this message from S. Scott saying that he's seen the take-home figures and they're making him cry. Apologies, Scott, this was never meant to make anybody cry. We're just here to deliver where we're currently moving towards. And certainly we're not advocates of what's happening at all. If you want to email me directly, I'm on dan.moss@orangegenie.co.uk. Would very much look forward to any of you who have any questions, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. Justin, you've asked when's the next webinar. I think this will be more on demand. It may well be, but we'll cross over into the 5th of April, get a feel of where we're at, and give you guys an update. Andy's looking at me and he's begging to answer one more question, so I'm going to give one more opportunity.
Yeah, just one more for Uday K. So he's talking about what kind of contract terms I should have with end client, being the PSB, to be outside of IR35. Do you suggest any contract template? Let's just be very, very clear about what is coming. The assessment for off-payroll purposes is a number of tests in line with intermediaries legislation. So it's about assessing the roles, your employment status for off-payroll purposes. It is not just about a compliant contract for services. So what we know with intermediaries legislation today, to include private sector, is that revenue will look at the contractual chain for IR35 purposes to make sure that certain clauses like the right of substitution, mutuality of obligation, and so on, are back-to-back through contractual chain. And then what they will do is look at the assessment of working practices. So is there anything indicative of an employer-employee relationship whilst providing your temporary services at a non-permanent place of work? So let's just be very clear, Uday and other contractors, it's not just about amending your contractual terms.
Okay, like I said, we'll keep the question box open for the next 10 minutes. I don't think we're going to cover any more questions off. We'll go away, we'll surmise. A lot of these questions do overlap each other, so we'll try and surmise them as best as we can. I just want to thank you very much for attending our webinar. I hope it was beneficial to you, and hopefully when we choose to do another one, you'll attend again. So just want to thank you very much from myself, Dan Moss. Have a great night.